It has finally happened, the full release of the version of Minecraft 1.21 called Tricky Trails has taken place. The update turned out to be very large and interesting, and today I will talk about all new features in this update. We'll start with the additions, a little later we'll talk about the changes, but in the description there is a timecode for your convenience. You can easily select the parts of the video you need. Blocks. Chiseled Copper is a decorative variant of the copper block, but it is also generated in a new structure, the trial chamber. We'll talk about it too. Chiseled Copper can be created both in the workbench and in the stone cutter, but the last one will be much more useful. This block has 8 variants, 4 oxidation levels and the same 4 levels but already waxed with honeycomb. Copper grates are another decorative variant of the copper block. It is generated in the trial chamber. It can be created in stone cutter and workbench. Still, there are 8 variants as well. The main feature of this block is that it is semi-transparent. By creating a house out of these blocks, sunlight will completely pass through it. The grates do not conduct redstone signal, and mobs will not be able to appear on this block. Copper Trapdoor, a new type of trapdoor made of copper. The player will be able to open and close it without redstone. This trapdoor can be created with 6 copper ingots. Yes, there are exactly 8 variants of this block, but it's not possible to create the trapdoor of a certain oxidation level. The player will have to wait for it to oxidize on its own. Copper trapdoors can be opened and closed by redstone impulse. They also are affected by a wind charge thrown by a player or breeze, causing them to close or open. The copper bulb is a light emitting unit. It turns on or off when it receives a redstone impulse and doesn't require constant power to emit light like a regular redstone lamp. The level of light emitted depends on the degree of oxidation of this block. Copper bulbs are generated in the trial chamber, but they can be created from the 4 copper blocks of the desired oxidation level, a blaze rod and redstone dust. The comparator can read the state of the copper bulb, and if the bulb is on, regardless of the level of oxidation, it gives a signal of 15 units power. The observer too can read the state of the copper bulb. Copper doors are a new type of door. The player will be able to open and close them without redstone. They are also affected by redstone impulse from breeze or the player's wind charges. Copper doors are created from 6 ingots, and yes, just like with copper trapdoors, the level of oxidation will have to be weighted manually. But the doors can be found in the trial chamber. Of course, there are 8 versions, 4 oxidation levels and their waxed versions. If you are a builder and love Tuff, you can rejoice, because they have added variations of this to the game. The first thing you can create from Tuff is slabs, stairs and walls. The texture looks quite beautiful, but most importantly, from 2 slabs you can create Chiseled Tuff, a cute block on which you can spot the flows of wind from breeze. Next is the Polished Tuff. It is created from 4 Tuff blocks in workbench or 1 Tuff in the stone cutter. Then comes the Tuff bricks. These are generated in the trial chamber, but you can create them in the workbench or stone cutter from Polished Tuff. Of course, now that we have bricks, we can create slabs, stairs and walls from them. And of course, Chiseled Tuff bricks. Chiseled Tuff and bricks are different, not be confused. I think that with the addition of the trial chamber to the game, a lot of people have forgotten that there is a crafter, also called an auto workbench. This is a brand new block that performs the function of automatic creation of items. This block is created from 5 ingots of iron, 1 workbench, 2 units of redstone dust and dropper. In fact, this block is not as simple as you might think. Like the workbench, the crafter has 9 slots, which means that the crafting grid are 3 by 3. You can place blocks or items in these slots, but you can't get the item you created without redstone. It is simply impossible. If the player gives a signal, a block or item will drop from his conditional mouth. One of the main features is that you can load items into the crafter using hoppers and droppers. The items come into the crafter one by one, from left to right and from top to bottom. Identical items will not be filled into the same slot as long as there are empty slots in the crafter. The hopper placed under the crafter will not pull out items that are ready, only items that have been placed in the crafter as an ingredient. Another feature of the crafter is that empty slots can be disabled to prevent items from being placed there. To do this, just hover over a slot and right-click on it. The same way they can be unlocked. Crafter will create the first recipe you receive. Therefore, you will have to control this process with the help of redstone mechanisms. For example, this is how fully automatic production of shulker boxes would look like. So you'll have to think a little bit before you create something complicated. Now let me tell you about not less interesting blocks. First up is the trial spawner. This is a new kind of spawner spawner. You can create it, but you can find it in the trial chamber. This block will summon hostile mobs, the number of which depends on the number of nearby players. Once the player or players have defeated all monsters, the spawner will give a proportional reward for the battle. Trial spawner cannot be mined with any tools, even with Silk Touch enchantments. It will take the player almost 4 minutes of real time to destroy the spawner, but it is not necessary. After defeating the mobs, the spawner goes to cooldown, which lasts exactly 30 minutes. After that, it activates again. The light level does not affect the trial spawner, and as soon as the player approaches a distance of 14 blocks, the spawner will emit particles of sparks and will begin to summon mobs. Spawner summons monsters in waves. Until the first wave is not destroyed, the new one will not appear, but it works only with one spawner. In one room there can be several of them, and they always work independently of each other. After winning from the trial spawner, you can get trial key, glowing berries, emeralds, baked potatoes, golden carrots, ender pearls, regeneration and strength potions. I would like to point out that the trial spawner will summon certain mobs depending on the blocks on which is placed. If it is chiseled stuff, breeze will appear, mossy cobblestone, zombie, chiseled sandstone, husk, cobweb, spider, moss, slime, stone bricks, silverfish. Two ordinary and mossy cobblestones are baby zombies. Cobweb, podzol and red mushrooms is a cave spider. Packed ice, stray, bone blocks, skeleton, podzol, bone blocks and red mushrooms, bogged. I should add that destroying these blocks and placing others will not affect the summoning of mobs in any way, it's just a visual marker for the players. The next block is the vault. It can also be found only in a trial chamber. You can get the block and it takes almost 4 minutes to destroy it. The vault is designed to give you more valuable rewards, but to open it you will need the trial key. As soon as the player comes closer than 4 blocks, the vault will start emit sparks and the face on the texture will open its mouth. After using the key on the block, the vault will give the player a reward of 3 to 6 items, which can be these items. The most interesting items are ominous bottles of the first and second levels, wind charges, armor trim bolt, banner pattern guster, music disc precipice and trident. The chance is extremely small, but it is still there. In the single player game, the player will able to open a certain vault with the key only once. The second time will not work, but because of bug on big servers it can work. The thing is that the vault can remember only 128 players' IDs. Further, it will be reset, and you can open vaults again. The next block is the ominous trial spawner. This seems to be a complicated version of the usual trial spawner. Its main difference is that it summons enhanced enemies and gives out more valuable rewards. This trial spawner is basically not even a block. It can be found in the creative inventory. It is a state of a regular spawner, while having a unique texture. Although with the help of the command, these blocks can be summoned. To convert a normal trial spawner into ominous trial spawner, the player will need to drink an ominous bottle of any level. We'll talk about the ominous bottle and the effect a little later in this video. After this action, all spawners within a radius of 14 blocks will become ominous, and summoned mobs with a regular spawner will be automatically destroyed. Instead of them will appear reinforced enemies, which will be equipped with more solid armor and powerful weapons. Mobs that are not able to wear equipment will be summoned without changes. Mobs appear with the iron helmet and chestplate, diamond chestplate or chainmail chestplate. The armor may have copper patterns of the bolt or flow template. The armor will always be enchanted with the level 4 fire resistance, level 4 projectile protection and the usual level 4 protection. Mobs from the melee category will be holding a regular iron sword or with the enchantments sharpness or a knockback of the first level. They may even be a diamond sword but without enchantments. Mobs from the ranged category will have a bow without enchantments or with the enchantments power or punch of the first level. I will upset all players, but equipment from the mobs that were summoned by ominous spawner after death will not be dropped, regardless of the looted enchantment. Mobs, by the way, summoned all the same that were summoned from the usual trial spawner. That's not all, because in addition to the difficulty enemies, ominous trial spawner summons various projectiles. It can be regular arrow, poisoned arrow, or a level 4 slowness arrow, fire charge or wind charge. The nastiest of these are the lingering potion. This affects both the player and the summoned monsters. It can be strength, speed and feather falling, but it's not as scary as the new effects. Infestation, and an entity with this effect applied has a 10% chance to summon 1 or 2 silverfish when taking damage. Silverfish are immune to this effect. Wind charged, an entity with this effect applied will emit wind charges upon death. Weaving, upon death the entity spreads blocks of cobwebs. Oozing, an entity ability with this effect will summon 2 slimes upon death. Slimes cannot be affected by this effect. They can also be bruised, but we'll talk about that later. So you can understand that these spawners are really ominous. The main thing from them we need a reward, ominous trial key, but it can also drop baked potatoes, steak, golden carrots, rotten flesh, potions of regeneration and strength. All of this was needed just to get the key to open a new block, the ominous vault. It's also essentially not a block, but only a state of the regular vault. Even so, it can be found in the trial chambers and is completely generated in that structure, rather than a place in a regular vault. All the rules and features that I talk about in the section with the regular vault also apply to the ominous vault, so I won't dwell on it. I'll just tell you about the reward. You can also get from 3 to 6 different items. The most interesting to me are diamond block, enchanted golden apple, ominous bottle from the 3rd to the 5th levels, music disc creator, and the main goal, heavy core. The heavy core is also a new block. As you have already realized, you can only get it from the ominous vault. It is a main ingredient in the Mace recipe. We will talk about it later. The heavy core is very similar in size to the player's head or the skull of mob. To get a heavy core, you will have to spend about 15 seconds of real time. It can be placed underwater. It is fully waterlogged block and its explosion resistance is equal to the obsidian block. That was all blocks. Now we can safely move on to the items that were added in this update. If there are 4 new effects, then their potion variants should appear. That's right, Potion of Infestation can be brewed from Awkward Potion and a stone block. Potion of Oozing can be brewed from a slime block. Potion of Weaving can be brewed from a cobweb block, and Potion of Wind Charging can be brewed from breeze rods. Each of these potions can of course be upgraded to a splash potion, as well as creating a lingering potion from it. Since we have new lingering potions, we can get typed arrows from them. The effects are still the same: Oozing, Weaving, Wind Charge and Infestation. If you listened carefully, you remember that new patterns from banners dropped from the vaults. There are 2 of them. The first one is a flow with the logo of the village hiding in the leaves from Naruto. The second Guster, but it can be seen breeze. The patterns are nice and in my case will not be unnecessary. Breeze rod is a new item that drops from breeze. You can get 4 wind charges from this rod. Also, it's used in the recipe for creating a mace and flow smithing template. The number of rods dropped from breeze is affected by the looting enchantments, and at level 3 you can get between 4 and 8 units. There are 3 music discs in the game. The first is from Iron Sheriff called Precipice and can be found in the usual vaults. When it plays, the comparator picks up a signal of 13 units. The second one from Lena Rain, called Creator, it's dropped from the ominous vaults. It emits a signal of 12 units. The third, also from Lena Rain and also called Creator, only the music box version, can be found in the decorated pots in the trial chamber. It gives out a signal of 11 units. One of the most significant features are the paintings. Christopher Zatterstrand is back and has given a 50 new paintings. All of them are drawn in his typical style, so don't worry. Bouquet, Cave Bird, Cotan, End Boss, Fern, Owl Lemons, Sunflower, Tides, Backyard, Pond, Changing, Finding, Low Mist, Passage, Orb. These are the official names of the paintings that were drawn by Christopher Zatterstrand. But in addition to these paintings, 5 more have been added, only by Sarah Boylan. She works as an artist at Mojang. The paintings are very beautiful and extremely different from the ones painted by Christopher. Meditative, Prairie Ride, Baroque, Humble and Packed. In the comments you can write which of the paintings you like the most. There are exactly 3 new Pottery Sherds: Flow, Guster and Scrape. To get these sherds, the player will have to destroy the decorated pot in the trial chamber. This is the only way to get them in the game. I like all of them, but I like the one with the eggs pictured the most. 2 new smithing templates have been added to the family. The first is the bolt, is dropped from the regular vault. It looks pretty good. It can be duplicated, but you'll need a copper block to do so. The second is flow, dropped from the ominous vault, and it looks awesome. It's like flows of wind dispersing through the armor. You can duplicate it too, but you'll need a breeze road to do so. The cartographer has finally decided to leave the village to try to find new structures. So now you will be able to buy a new map from him, the trial chamber map. The journeyman level cartographer will be able to sell it to the player for 12 emeralds and 1 compass. I've already mentioned them in passing, but there are 2 keys in the game. The first is the trial key, which is dropped from the trial spawner and is needed to open the normal vault. With a 6.8% chance it can be found in the chest of the trial chamber, and with a 2.8% chance it will drop from the decorated pot. The second is the ominous trial trial key, with a 30% chance it is dropped from the ominous trial spawner. There are no other ways to get it. It is intended only for opening the ominous vault. Wind Charge is a ranged weapon. Wind charges can be used to push away various entities as well as create redstone impulse and activate mechanisms. The Wind Charge is Breeze's main attack. After the player throws a charge, it will fly on the smooth trajectory, but at the end it will slightly shift. The cooldown between throws is 0.5 seconds. It can be seen in the hotbar. Once the one charge hits an entity, it deals a small amount of damage and also pushes them away a bit, creating a wind blast animation. The player will be able to deflect the wind charge with a range or melee weapon similar to the gust fireball. The main feature of these charges is that they can interact with non-iron doors and trapdoors, gates, buttons, levers, bells, horse flowers, dripstone, decorated pots, and lit candles. If you successfully throw a wind charge underneath yourself, it will create a wind blast that will throw the player up a certain number of blocks. The player will not take damage if he lands on the same Y level as the wind charge explosion. If, however, the player throws himself or another player up and falls below, the player will take damage from the fall. The ominous bottle is not a new potion, but rather an item that you can drink and receive the bad omen effect for 1 hour and 40 minutes. This bottle has exactly 5 levels. After the player drinks the contents, the bottle magically disappears from the inventory. The ominous bottle is dropped from the raid capitans as well as from 2 types of vaults. Next in the video we will talk about this new fact. The last new item is the Mace, a melee weapon that does more damage the higher the player falls with this weapon and hits the enemy. This weapon has the lowest speed in the game, only 0.6 units. It's as slow as possible, and it's not designed for fast attacks. It can only be created by obtaining the heavy core and the breeze rod from the trial chamber. Yes, it's currently the rarest weapon in the game. The Mace's durability is 500 units, which is not bad at all. You can repair it with 2 damaged maces, but it's best to use breeze rods, it is the cheapest. Dealing damage wastes 1 unit of durability and normal attack deals 6 units of damage to the enemy, which is exactly 3 hearts of life. The main feature of the Mace, it is fall from height. Starting from the height of 1.5 blocks, the player will be able to apply an increased attack. For example, as soon as the player falls from height and can successfully hit the enemy, then all the damage from the fall will be dropped, and as it transferred to the attack of the Mace. Falling from the height of 20 blocks will be able to do 40 damage, and that's 20 hearts. But if the player cannot get, he will simply damage from falling from a height. Unique enchantments have been invented for this weapon. Density increases the damage dealt for each flying block by 0.5 units per level. Thus, without these enchantments falling from a height of 10 blocks, the player will deal 15 hearts of life, and with the density enchantments of the 5th level, 27.5 hearts. Breach reduces the effectiveness of armored opponents' armor protection. The effectiveness of any armor is reduced by 15% per level. There are a total of 4 levels of enchantments. Windburst throws the player up after the smashing attack. The higher the level, the more powerful, allowing you to make several such attacks in a row. Roughly speaking, Wind Charge will drop from your mace and throw you upwards. In addition to unique enchantments, you can also apply regular enchantments to your mace with the anvil, such as Smite, Bane of Arthropods, Fire Spect, Unbreaking, Mending, and Curse of Vanishing. The enchantments Density, Breach, Smite, and Bane of Arthropods are maceally exclusive, so you have to choose. The mace performs very well in tandem with the Wind Charges, but it's not as easy as it looks like at the first glance. If you practice on normal slow mobs, no problem, but if it's a player, you'll have to try a little harder before you hit it. There are not so many mobs in this update, just 2, but we have to talk about them too. First up is Bogged, another variant of the usual skeleton. He's covered with thickets of moss, and on his head grow brown and red mushrooms. Bogged can be found in both ordinary and mangrove swamps. Its behavior is extremely similar to that of a normal skeleton, but of course there are differences. Bogged shoots at the same speed as other skeletons, but the cooldown between attacks is much longer, as much as 3.5 seconds on easy and normal difficulty levels and 2.5 seconds of hard difficulty. They use poisoned arrows, which of course do extra damage. Bogged has less life than a normal skeleton with only 8 hearts. After killing him with a 100% chance, dropped bones and ordinary arrows, and with a chance of 50 to 93.75% poisoned arrows. Of course, the number is affected by the looting enchantments. If you fast enough, you can use shears to cut mushrooms off its head and use them for cooking. Ew, that sounds pretty gross. As I said earlier, they can be found in the trial chamber. The second mob is Breeze, an exclusive mob that can only be found in the trial chamber, as he is summoned from both the regular and the ominous trial spawners. He has 15 hearts of life, which is not much. It's impossible to hit Breeze with the projectiles, they will either pass through him or bounce off him. However, it's possible to hit Breeze with the wine charge and causes small damage of half a heart. In the state of peace, Breeze moves around the chambers with the help of his guster, like a bee hovering above the floor. But as soon as an enemy appears in his field of vision, he starts the move by jumping long distance while firing wind charges. Of course, wind charges can also activate various traps in trial chamber, so during the battle you need to be extremely careful, because opposing potions or any arrow can hit your character. In fact, the mob only at first glance seems too dangerous. If you get close to him, he will not be able to attack, and it's easy to kill him. From Breeze dropped rods, which can be used in the creation of Mace and to get wind charge. Of course, the number of items affected by looting enchantments. Yes, they weren't that many mobs. Hopefully they will be a bit more in the next update. Now we can safely move on to the features that were associated with the world generation. Of course, we will talk about the trial chamber. This structure is generated strictly underground between levels Y, -40 and 0. It's designed for the people in the middle stage of the game. This means that you already have enchanted iron armor and some diamond tools and weapons, but this is more for normal spawners. If it comes to the ominous ones, it's better to be safe and equip yourself with the netherite armor and tools. The trial chamber is made entirely of tuff and copper blocks of different oxidation levels. No mobs just appear here, only those summoned by regular and ominous spawners. You can find this structure with help of the explorer map, which was safely purchased from the cartographer, but something tells me that most often players will accidentally stumble upon it during the underground mining of blocks. Each trial chamber consists of several random parts: entrance, atrium, corridors, hallways, intersection and chambers. There can be only one entrance and atrium in the structure. All other components that I have named occur in several pieces. These pieces make a complete structure, and it will be a very difficult task to find two identical ones. In each entrance there will be a chest with 2 to 3 things in it: arrows, honeycomb, wooden axe, sticks and a trail key. In the corridors, chests are not generated. Instead, there will be barrels. Barrels will contain tuff, scaffolding, bamboo planks, torches, hidden signs, ender pearls, damaged stone axes and pickaxes, honeycombs and a damaged iron axe. At the intersection, you will be able to find a chest, and in it, amethyst shard, cake, iron, emerald and diamond blocks, regular diamond, damaged diamond axes and pickaxe. In addition to the chest, barrels will be found at intersection containing bamboo planks, baked potatoes, a diamond, an empty bucket, a compass, and damaged gold and diamond pickaxes and axes. Occasionally, a chest of supplies will be found in the chambers, and it will contain an arrow, glowberries, baked potatoes, tuff, poisoned arrows, an arrow of slowness, acacia planks, a torch, bone meal, a moss block, a bucket of milk, potions of strength and regeneration, and a damaged stone pickaxe. In the corridors, players will come across decorated pot. In addition to the pottery sherds, on the pots themselves inside the pots can be found an emerald, an arrow, an iron ingot, a trial key, a diamond, an emerald and diamond block, and a music disc. As I said before, in the rooms themselves you can expect different kind of traps, such as dispensers with different projectiles. They can be both help you and hurt you, so step with the caution. Now we can move on to the gameplay additions that appeared in this update. I don't know why, but this is one of my favorite things: new advancements. Minecraft Trial Edition. The player will just need to get into the structure of the trial chamber. Crafters, crafting, crafters. To complete it, you'll need to be near the crafter when he creates the crafter. Lighten up. The player will need to remove the oxidation from the copper bulb. Who needs rockets? To do this, the player will need to throw himself up 8 blocks with the help of a wind charge. Under lock and key. The player needs to open with the help of the trial key ordinary vault. Revaulting. The player needs to open an ominous vault using the ominous trial key. Blowback. To do this, you need to deflect Breeze's wine charge and destroy him with it. It's a difficult task. Overkill. To complete it, the player will need to deal 50 damage in one hit with the mace. In this case, the mob doesn't have to have so many lives, you just need to fall from a certain height. Now I want to pay attention to a new gameplay feature called ominous events. Roughly speaking, the developers have reworked the bad omen effect for the better. Previously, the player would just have to kill the pillager capitan and then go to the village to trigger a raid. Now, the player will have to choose of whether or not to summon an ominous event. Ominous events so far means only 2, a pillager raid and an ominous trial. To summon one of these events, the player needs to drink contents of an ominous bottle. Bottle is dropped from the vault or upon the death of raid captain. The player then receives the effect of a bad omen for 1 hour and 40 minutes. If the player goes to the village, the effect is converted from bad omen to raid omen and starts a standard pillager raid, the difficulty of which depends on the level of the effect. If the player with this effect enters the trial chamber and approaches the trial spawner, the effect is converted to a trial omen for 15 minutes. Each level of the effect adds 15 minutes to the total duration of the effect. Of course, a marvelous soundtrack has been created for the update. The Tricky Trails was no exception. Exactly 9 new music tracks have been added. Each of them can play in the main menu, but also in a special biomes. In the description I will leave a link to the whole album you can listen to. As for me, it's very cool. I listened to it while writing the script and enjoyed it every time. In addition to the music, 4 new ambient sounds were added for the caves. These are the creepy sounds that scare the player at the most inappropriate moments. Now we can move on to changing things that already exist. They're just as interesting and useful to the players. Now when a player holds an axe and a shield, the game will no longer prioritize clearing copper blocks of oxidation over picking up a shield. The same goes for wood, the game will prioritize raising the shield. Doors made of different materials are now placed facing each other by default to form a double door rather than 2 separate ones. Piston activation sounds in the game have become quieter. This was done to eliminate sounds that were too harsh and loud when used in redstone mechanisms. Normal and calibrated skulk sensors now picking up the sounds of water tuning into the block of ice if the player moves with boots with the Frostwalker's enchantment. There is such a thing that item rarity in Minecraft. Rarity can be recognized by a characteristic color of the item's name. For example, an enchanted golden apple has a purple name instead of white. This is the epic rarity of the item. So Trident in the game had the rarity of the normal level. Starting with this version, Trident has epic rarity, and the text of the name is now purple. Witches will now have a 100% chance of dropping 4 to 8 units of redstone dust upon death, regardless of the drop of other items. Bots can now finally be leashed, just like on Bedrock, which is extremely useful. This is the kind of thing that should definitely be on both versions of the game. Activated dynamite that was able to pass through the portal to the Nether will no longer destroy the portal blocks after the explosion. The developers have also improved the obsidian platform that is generated when we get to the end. Previously, if the player destroyed this platform, or for example built something on it, then when you re-enter, it regenerated and destroyed everything that was built on. Now, instead of destroying blocks, it will destroy them, and they in turn will be dropped as an item. Now, ender pearls that are thrown by player into the portal will be able to take him to the dimension where the ender pearl fell into the portal. This is extremely handy, but be careful, it can end very badly. Also, finally after so many years, player can safely travel through any portals on horseback. This was waited for a long time, but finally the game has such an opportunity. If suddenly you don't like it, with the help of the special game rule, it can be turned off. Another important change concerns attributes. Finally, the set values to the command will be saved regardless of the respawn of the player, and the active effects of potions will be saved between crossing dimensions. There are even new attributes. Burning time, a value that determines how long an entity remains on fire after being ignited. A value of 0 removes the burning time, while the value of 1 allows entity to burn for the standard amount of time. Higher values increases the entity's burning time. Knockback resistance is a value that determines how much knockback an entity receives from explosion. A value of 1 removes all knockback, while 0 does not reduce knockback overall. Mining efficiency, a value with which can increase the mining speed. Movement efficiency, a value that is responsible for the speed of movement on blocks that slow the player down. For example, the soul sand. If you enable this attribute, then when moving on this block and similar blocks, you will not lose speed and slow down. Oxygen bonus, a value that affects the chance of the entity not consuming air underwater. Sneaking speed, a value that affects the player movement speed when sneaking. Submerged mining speed, the value of submerged mining speed. A value of 1 means that submerged mining is as fast as on land, and value of 0 means that submerged mining will be impossible. Sweeping damage ratio, a value that is responsible for the amount of damage from the basic attack that is transferred to the secondary target during a sweeping strike. Water movement efficiency, the value that is responsible for the speed of movement underwater. A value of 1 will allow the player to move underwater as well as on land. Attack knockback, the value value that is responsible for the knockback when dealing a damage. This used to work on mobs. Of course, the coolest thing about the update is the new panorama that we'll see every time we enter the game. This time it's the corridor location in the trial chamber. It looks nice, I love it. Phew! That's where the video comes to an end. It took an extremely long time to create it, so I'm really counting on your subscription and likes. You can even share this video with your friends. I'd really appreciate it. There were a lot of technical improvements, which you can read about in the link in the description. Write in the comments if you like this update, and what update do you think will be next. While you're waiting for the new video, I suggest you watch this. They are also very interesting. Subscribe to the channel, leave a like and click on the bell. We'll hear from you again.